Welcome to Energy Stew. This is Peter Roth, your host. And I'd like to ask you, aren't there simple cures for just about everything? Oh, yeah? What have you cured lately that you're sure you did a great job and it's all gone and it was easy to do? Well, it's not so simple. And uh, we all have bodies that need work, that are regularly surprising us with new opportunities. And to help us get to the bottom of trouble in our systems, all of our systems, within ourselves, we have many, to help us understand all that and to know how to work on ourselves or get help better is a guest who has been on the show before. And he wrote a book called Sane Asylums. So it explains the history of homeopathy. And so we're going to talk about homeopathy again with the author and homeopath, Jerry Kantor. Jerry, welcome back to Energy Stew.
Thank you so much, Peter. Pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm so glad that we could talk because your work teaches us something that we need to know about life. And it's most people understand life isn't that simple, but they don't know how to uncover the patterns in a way that they can help themselves about it. And that's something that you do for a living, is to help people find homeopathic remedies, but in a very sophisticated manner that I would like to talk with you about. That it's complex and it takes a very experienced homeopath to understand the complexities of it. So you do that every day for people, right? and,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's time consuming because you know, and we've talked about it before, is that most people in life are looking for quick cures. You can go to the store and buy a homeopathic remedy for a headache, or well, actually that's not that easy because there are many different kinds of headaches. But for any condition that a remedy at the store says it's for, and you go, oh, I'll take this, and that's like a home cure that's kind of nice, but not necessarily thorough enough. And so what you're trying to do is get more thorough with your patients as to what their deeper patterns are that are causing these troubles. So can you explain that a little bit better than I can?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a really wrong, no pun intended, wrong-headed approach to a headache. It's based on the idea that everybody's the same and there's some remedy that will fix maybe 5 kinds of headaches. Homeopathy is a whole lot more interesting than that. Much, much more interesting. First of all, the idea is that we take seriously the individuality of each of us, our uniqueness. People come to me all the time and they say, "Oh, Jerry, I fall between all the cracks. The doctors don't know what to do with me." I say, "Hooray, that's great. Everybody's a crack." I like to, we like this. All the things that are not popular in the conventional world are very popular with a homeopath. We like the individuality. We like the specific words you use to describe your condition. We like the details of whatever trauma in the past has impacted you, whether you know it or not. Often the things that matter to me when I'm taking someone's case is not what they tell me; it's what they're trying not to tell me, what they've kind of convinced themselves is unimportant, something that they've been struggling with for a long time. So homeopathy is a kind of an really investigative process, kind of an excavation of the psyche, and we respect the fact that there's much more going on that inside somebody than is coming out of their mouth. So what helps us to do this, and once you get the hang of it, it's not that mysterious, it's not even that complex, is the physical symptoms that we have to interpret. They're actually a form of speech. I would call it the somatic language. Well, it does take skill to understand what that's all about, and you need a criterion, you need a system within which you can interpret those symptoms. But I have a method. I call it an algorithm whereby within an hour and a half, I get to the bottom of things with somebody. I find out how they tick. I find out how the way they become uncomfortable in certain situations elicits the symptoms that they produce. How we become uncomfortable has a great deal to do with how we become sick. Maybe I mentioned this last time. My best question, the best question I ever ask anybody, and I hold off on it until fairly far into the interview if I haven't figured it out myself, is what is your hot button? What's the situation you least like to be in? And part two of that question, what happens when your button is pushed? So it's a fantastic question. When your hot button is pushed, what do you do? Do you get drunk? Do you write a poem? Do you punch somebody in the nose? Do you withdraw to your room? Do you overeat? Do you weep? Do you get irritable? Do you desire to travel? A tremendous range of answers that people give. Someone will say, okay, I could also ask, what's the worst thing about such a situation? Let's say you've got pain. For a long time, I thought people would just say to me, "You idiot, it hurts. What are you asking me for?" But no, if someone has a pain, a certain type of a painful ailment, and I say, "What's the worst thing about that for you?" Another part of this question, they're not going to say, "It hurts, you idiot. Go away." They say, "Oh, I can't go visit my mother, or I can't work on my stamp collection, or I have to work, or it reminds me of such and such a situation." There's a tremendous range of information that people give you when they answer these questions, and they narrow my investigation until I really, I start asking some strange questions, and I eventually get to some very interesting place where I can have an understanding of the client at the mental, emotional, and physical level, and where the symptoms make a complete sense. They're part of a tapestry of that person that is saying over and over again the same thing. And then I can find a remedy that matches that. Well, and what that means, Peter, this is the core of the homeopathic idea, the idea of using like to cure like. There's some substance in the universe that we have studied, which could be a plant, a mineral or a chemical compound, or even another drug, that if it was given to a bunch of healthy people, and we didn't tell them what it was, so they were blinded, but they kept their lives stable, would produce in a range of healthy people the exact profile that I am looking into with my client. So it's a matching game. I have to figure that out.
Have you ever tried that?
That's called approving, by the way.
What's
That's
that?
called approving. That is homeopathic research called approving. And it's the inverse of the law of similars. We actually inculcate a state in people through their, with very, very narrow use of, this variable, this one substance is the one thing that's impacting them, which will produce this whole range of symptoms consistently in a bunch of people. And so that state that we inculcate, we create in people with a gross amount of the substance that when it's diluted can be given to the person who matches that, and you'll get a curative response.
Right. And the government is kind of protesting against homeopathy because it's made of toxic substances and it frightens them. And
well, that's intentional. That's completely ridiculous and a cynical thing. And because since 1938, and even before that, the FDA has recognized that the law of similars is a law of nature, and that homeopathics are drugs based on exactly that idea. The dilute amount of the substance cures, whereas the gross amount does not, does the opposite. And that's just the law of nature. It's why we get back on the horse that threw us. A junior version of that. It's just so absolutely advanced placement common sense. And that argument that there's something toxic there is very cynical, as I say, because it's clearly the preferred reality of the pharmaceutical companies that don't like competition, that don't want to be competed with by something that doesn't even have a patent, that will interfere with their profiteering. It's just clearly the money. But you can't get rid of a law of nature. You can't legislate away, say, the acupuncture meridians because you don't like them, because they compete with the drugs. And homeopathics don't belong to anybody either. They're not patented, and it's purely money interests, and we all know that.
Right, but on the other side of it, people will say that the dilution is so diluted that nothing exists anymore.
Well, let me try this with you. Let's say I ask you, what would be the best piece of news you could ever hear in your life? What would make the what kind of news could you get that would absolutely be the most fantastic thing you ever heard for you personally?
I guess it
I'm not.
depends. No, but to me, it would depend on where it's coming, what the history of that news is coming from.
I give you freedom in this question to create that entire context.
Right. Right.
So
So
the information would include that.
I'm exposing myself right now.
No, I'm not asking you to do it, but let's just do
No,
this
I don't mind
abstractly.
exposing myself.
We can do it abstractly. You're saying that depends on the condition. I'm saying in my question, good news would include the change of the condition that would suit you exactly right. And I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
Anyway, let's say there's some piece of news. I think you can generalize from this. I'd be shocked if you couldn't. Um, there's something that everybody would love to hear. My kid got into Harvard, or I won the Nobel Prize, or my mother came back from the dead, or something. Complete freedom to have a piece of news, some unbelievable piece of fortune that's specific to you. You know, not everybody wants to be rich or famous. Somebody might like, my God, I love to swim, and since I had my accident, I can't swim anymore. If only I could swim even for half an hour, that would be incredible. I mean, something specific to anybody. So where I'm going with this is, let's assume that everybody has something like that, okay? And I could put it in a bottle,
right.
and you could sip it.
Right.
That would be the most unbelievable medicine that you could ever have
Yeah.
on the face of the earth.
You know,
And
I
the thing
guess,
about that is, what's
yeah.
different about this from everything when people complain that there's nothing in the substance, we don't need something in a substance to feel good. The information matters. And furthermore, good luck if you want to explain that in reductionist terms. Good luck, right? Like if I tell you and you agree with me that there's some piece of information that you could hear and you can make it up, it could be anything that would make you unbelievably happy. I would like to be the world champion tango dancer. Okay. Somebody's going to come into my life and tell me, Jerry, I'm the world's greatest tango dance teacher that ever lived. And I will spend the next week with you doing nothing but this. And when we come out of this week, you will be a world-class tango dancer. Okay. I made it up. But let's say I could put that into a bottle. The point is, that's great medicine. I don't think anybody could possibly disagree with it, but I challenge anyone to break that piece of medicine down into reductionist terms, meaning some kind of material. Impossible. It's too global. It's too spiritual. When you are affected by something or a piece of music, do you think there's any kind of material substance, a pill, a plant, I mean, anything that will make you feel like you feel when you've heard the most profound, incredible music that fits your mood and your state of, your whole, that addresses your sense of being in the world? Yeah, I'd love to hear about that. I mean, you can't, but the closest thing you can come to that is a homeopathic remedy that matches you at some deep, very deep level, and
right.
resolves the need for that, and pushes you in the direction of your higher self.
Well, I love that. I I feel like my higher self part is doing well. I think for me, I mean, you push some buttons that were good for me to think, and a lot has to do now with aging and with having a more capable body of, just being able to get on the floor with my granddaughters and play. I can't get on the floor and get up that easily. So it's the disabilities with aging, to me, have been extremely disappointing. Even though I'm doing well for an 80-year-old, I'm seeing myself as quite limited compared to the way I used to be. So that's something that I can't even imagine. A remedy is going to bring me back to that state of physical strength and ability to lift my granddaughters up, and I have bad shoulders, and get up off the ground with them, that kind of thing that um, is very physical and hard to believe that a remedy would fulfill those needs.
Yeah, a lot of my clients tell me that they'll say something like that, but in fact, you will find that there's a component to that which is not objective. There are a lot of other people who are 80 years old who have very similar body to yours and have a very different mindset. That's not in the least their problem. They'll have some other kind of problem. And if they get on the ground with their grandchildren and they have a difficulty with it, it would not be as disappointing to them. They'd still get a great deal of joy out of it. I'm speaking in general terms now, but I'm also speaking from my experience as a clinician. What we were talking about before the interview, that in a family, the siblings can have completely different experiences of their parents. We live in our bodies, and we're so used to ourselves. That's the great tragedy comedy of existence, that we we think everybody's the same way. It's not true. And when people process a deep remedy, on one level it's very mundane. On another level, it's extraordinarily extraordinary, even miraculous. The thing that that's been bugging you, it's in your rearview mirror, and you say, "Why did that ever bother me so much?" I can't tell you that you're not going to die. We're all going to die. That's right in the cards for all of us. We're all going to, most of us will get to 80 and beyond. Many of us, I should say. But what you're talking about, and I'm going from my clinical experience, if I were to take your case, as I do anybody else's, we would do some excavation and we'd find that this sense of disappointment is not completely objective. It has roots in something that goes way, way back.
Oh yeah, no,
and so there you are. If that issue can be dealt with and ameliorated, put aside, well, you won't live forever, but you will not, you would not be bothered by your current situation. You'd be able to be here and now, like all the cliches people use.
Right. So
I think of Woody Allen. I think of Woody Allen all the time. Who has pretty much can have a PhD in his own neuroses, right? Oh my God, we're all going to die. We're going to, how can you live? How do you get up in the morning? Something like that. And then if you process a certain remedy, you have the same understanding. The facts don't change, but you're just not bothered by that. It's in your rearview mirror.
This is very profound, and I understand that, and I see that. Question for me, for instance, is, well, why am I seeing that in such a limited way? Why do I make a big deal out of what I make a big deal out of? What's behind that? And it could come from many childhood things and other situations.
You haven't got the right tool to deal with it, unfortunately. Maybe if you were a yogi master, a guru, a meditation master, you could get there. But the homeopathic remedy, Peter, goes way beyond your prefrontal cortex, your way of thinking. That's your limitation. You're trying to fix yourself with the same tool that's limited. A remedy is like a bomb placed deep in the subconscious, and once it goes off, the landscape changes. The smoke clears, the dust settles, and the landscape is different. And you have your free prefrontal cortex has had nothing to do with it. So you can't just thinking it through. This is why people flunk psychotherapy all the time, because the only way they will get like a PhD in themselves and understand everything that's happened, but they cannot change the architecture of their psyche. But a remedy can. That's accurate. There are other things like that.
What it does is it takes the edges off. It smooths you out so that you flow more in life.
Yeah, I know, but we have bigger fish to fry.
Good. Yeah, I would say that your experiences with, because every one of your patients are different, of course, and challenging in a way that pushes all your curiosity buttons.
I'll tell you something. Here's another way of thinking about this, especially going back to what we talked about earlier about when people buy medicine at the drugstore, Whole Foods. There are low potency remedies for headaches, for allergies, for stomach upset, as if everybody's the same and your stomach upset, your allergies, same exactly like somebody else's. Okay, this is the delusion that is inculcated in the marketplace. But I'll put it in context. What the relationship is between an acute problem and a chronic problem. Okay, This is a horrible analogy, but let's say you bring me 5 people, and they come in here, and I take out a knife and I slash them on the shoulder, every one of them. For the first few hours, they are exactly the same. In a battlefield situation, they're bleeding. You've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to prevent infection, and you've got to deal with the shock of having something like that happen to you. They're all the same. But wait a couple of days, or wait even a few hours, and all these incredible differences will come out. There'll be somebody who doesn't stop bleeding, and there'll be somebody who goes into a profound PTSD shock. There'll be somebody, maybe a Hell's Angel rough guy type, that slap something on it and wouldn't think anything of it. There'll be somebody else who weeps uncontrollably. The chronic things come out later on, but in the acute stage, everybody is the same, and that's battlefield medicine. But the problem is that the model of battlefield medicine, which assumes that we're all alike, that has dominated all medicine. We're trying to use that for chronic situations, which is completely ridiculous. But it makes a lot of money. It's if you convince people that they're all the same and that we just have to, get them back to some level of normalcy, that makes a lot of money for people. But it never gets below the surface. It never teaches people not to be fearful of becoming ill, not to investigate what their existential issues are, because that would lead them in completely different directions than from buying some kind of quick fix medicine.
This is so fascinating. I'm so glad that you can explain it this way, because I guess so many of us are kind of bumping around in life in ways that don't know how to see ourselves, and to talk with you, is kind of putting a mirror up, but a mirror that filters appropriately to get to the bottom of things.
It's unfortunate that this is so abstract, Peter, because it sounds like, when you hear it in this way, it sounds almost platitudinous, like this can't possibly be. My preferred way of teaching, where this comes through to a point where this is absolutely common sense, is when I'm mentoring somebody, or somebody watches me practice, or even having their own case taken. And even then, you kind of go through this. It takes a while until you realize, oh my God, this is unbelievable. What has changed in me? It's both mundane and incredible at the same time. The other way, of course, is to write books where I can actually present cases like the Toxic Relationship Cure, the book before the Sane Asylum's book, that has that. These are fables that I've created from my case histories, to give a sense of things. But just talking abstractly like this, it's hard to understand. It's hard to buy, especially when the message isn't given in mainstream media.
Right. So that's why you need to spend an hour and a half talking with your patients to get to the bottom of things and understand how to interpret it in unique ways, because there's an endless amount of homeopathic remedies that you can use.
Yeah, by the way, it's not an hour and a half every time. The first session is an hour and a half. After that, I have a handle on my clients, and I kind of I have a much more narrower range of remedies that I can consider. And we have traction, and we're making good headway. But I want people to learn that diseases are not something that come out of the blue. We have a lot more to say about them. One of the great things about homeopathy is not that, maybe the greatest thing, not just that it cures and it makes us healthier, but the perspective that it provides people. So my clients, people I've seen for a long time, they can come and tell me, Jerry, my remedy's up. They tell me exactly the day and hour that it happened. They will start to tell me exactly what their new issues are. They might even start speculating, oh, I need a snake remedy, or I need a mineral. the amount of awareness that they've developed is just extraordinary. Mm-hmm. And they know and expect that I'm going to not just erase their symptoms, but help them along the way of life with a remedy that creates possibilities, that opens up their perspective and deals with the underlying issue. That my experienced patients are completely different from somebody who's got no orientation to this and comes for the first time. Very, very different. I get a kick out of it. A number of my clients actually have become homeopaths because they become so enamored of this process.
Wow, no, that's wonderful. And so you gave them a remedy that would want them to think that way.
It takes a while. It's not usually the first time.
Right.
They have to get the hang of that. Becoming a patient is actually a homeopathic patient is actually kind of a skill set, but it's a welcome one.
No, I'm fascinated. I think what you've talked about during this show is profound and I think inspiring because it can give us all a sense of opportunity in life that we might not have felt before. So we're getting near the end of the show. So you have two books, Sane Asylums and The Toxic Relationship Cure, and both books are fascinating. We already talked about the Sane Asylum in the previous show, where that's a lot about the history of homeopathy, and I really like what's in your Toxic Relationship Cure book. So people can find that on Amazon. And what's your website?
Well, if you go to rightwhalepress.com, that's my personal publishing website. The right whale from
okay. Rather than the left
habitat
whale.
in New England. Yeah. By the way, the Sane Asylums books, just to put a fine point on it, is a history of homeopathic mental asylums. It does incorporate the history of homeopathy, but the part of history that's been completely neglected, and I would say censored, is this history of these amazing homeopathic mental hospitals from between, especially 1875 to around 1930, when they had their heyday. And you won't find this incredible history in any conventional books about either mental health in this country or mental health hospitals. Just doesn't exist. It's a preferred reality that they didn't, because the success of these places is embarrassing to conventional psychiatry.
And it's amazing how successful they were. And your book really goes through so many of those hospitals and talks about how they were successful. So that's great. So we're really at the end of the show. How can people find you?
Well, my books have all kinds of contact information, but rightwhalepress.com or vitalforcehealthcare.com. That's my practice website. If you go to the Simon & Schuster site for Sane Asylums, the success of homeopathy before psychiatry lost its mind, you'll get a lot of information about me. But basically, Google Jerry Kantor, Sane Asylums, or rightwhalepress.com, and you'll find me.
Right. And that's JerryKantor.
Kantor. That's right.
Right. So thanks so much for being a guest again on Energy Stew. I'm so happy to talk with you.
Peter, you asked really thoughtful and important questions, and it's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Sure. And this is Peter Roth, your host of Energy Stew at prn.live. I can be reached at Peter@heartriver, HEART river.org. I'd love to hear from you, and thanks so much for listening.